Okay, on this one we're going to look at packet switching and routers. So we're going to go through the notes and I'll show you some packet tracer stuff as well. So really this one here, now there is what is a router video here. He goes into quite a lot of detail. Wouldn't hurt you to look at that one as well. Okay, he certainly goes into a lot more detail than I'm going to, well, possibly. Right, okay, now packet switching, and the idea of packet switching is what you're going to do is you're going to send, if you want to send some data to somebody, all right, let's say your web server, you're going to break it up into small amounts of data called packets, and then it will be broken up into these packets and sent individually, and they're like sent independently of each other. Okay, now they're called packets when they are between routers, but they're called frames when they're a local area network. All right, so just we'll get over that. Right, so we're broken up into manageable chunks as it says so there, and each packet contains a header, payload. Payload is the data, so if you imagine it's like the web page or something like that. We'll have an error checking in there as well, and we'll also have things like packet number as well. So here's an example. So we've got packet, 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 and then we can route those across. So let's have a look at an example then. So where is it? Come on, find it. Oh no. Routers, there we go. Right, so now router is drawn with a circle with a cross through it. That's the general idea. Okay, so I have computer A here, computer B here. So if, let's say I'm responding to B's request for a web page and it's too big to go into one packet, so we break it up into small packets and then it hits a router. Now we'll talk about routers in a minute. Now what a router will receive that packet, have a look at where it wants to go to, in other words its IP address, and then forward it to another router closer to its destination until finally it gets to the router which that network that computer B is on. Okay. Now you may notice, so it could decide to send it that way because that way is more congested, or it might go that way, you know, so it's not necessarily going to go, each packet's going to go the same route. So they're going to be received quite probably out of order, and then B will reassemble them. So what do we have in there? We have error checking, we have payload, which is what we tend to overlook the payload as something, you know, that we're not really interested in, but that's what the whole point is. So that will be much bigger. The sender's IP address, the destination IP address, and a packet number. Now there is more stuff, and we'll get into more of that later. But just generally speaking, that's what we can think of what we're sending. Okay. So now what we'll, as I say, we'll go into more detail on that in a minute. Now going back to this one here. Now, why is the sender's IP address included in the packet header? Well, because often we'd need to reply either with an acknowledgement to say we received that packet, or we'd need to, you know, if it's a request for something like I want a web page, you know, we know who it's going to. Now, here's another example showing the same sort of thing. You just about make out an outline here of the countries. So we're sending packets 1, 2, 3, and they're going in different directions, and then they are going to be arriving out of order. Now, what the bloke who invented the internet, who came packet switching, the bloke who invented it was on that video I mentioned, Glory Geeks, and his analogy was postcards. Right, you're sending some postcards to somebody, so you've got a finite amount of space, so you fill it up. Right, okay, then I need to put a postcard number, 1 of 3, whatever. Write another one, fill that up. Write another one, fill that up. So you go to the post box, chuck it in there. It may go different routes, it may arrive at different days. Obviously different days wouldn't be very good on the internet, but you get the idea. All right, now the router. Now the important bit about routers is that they use the same protocol. Okay, so they're used to connect networks using the same protocol. So really important that we get that. So using the same protocol. And we're all using the same protocol, and that's TCP/IP. Okay, and when we go from one router to another, it's called to a hop. Okay, so the job of it is to read an IP address of the recipient. We talked about IP addresses last time, and then forward it on to the next router. Okay. Now it talks about routing algorithms and stuff like that. We don't need to worry about that. Dijkstra's algorithm we'll be looking at later on. Now a gateway, the problem is with gateway, and I've never really come across them, but they use different protocols. So it connects networks using different protocols. Okay. Not to be confused with your default gateway, which is essentially a router. Now, we haven't finished. All right. So if I load up PowerShell, as it's called now, and go ipconfig. Whoops, if I could spell. Jesus. Right. Okay. So we have our IP address. Okay. Now I didn't have to physically put that in. It was done automatically. It's automatically sorted out. I have a subnet mask there, which is a little bit odd, but we'll come back to that. Oh, that's because that's the I'm on wireless. So have a look at this one down here. Right. So I've got subnet mask, which we'll talk about later on. Don't worry about that. There's my IP address, and there's the default gateway. Now the default gateway is the address of my router. So the router for BT, for some reason, most of them start off at 1, is 192.168.1.254. So what it's saying is anything that isn't in my local network will go to the default gateway, which is my router. Okay, so your router at home connects you to other networks. That's the job of a router, is to connect networks together. Now let's have a look at this example here in Packet Tracer. Okay, now so what I've got here is a PC here. Now if I just put my mouse over it, you can see it's got an IP address. No, it won't let me do that. And we've got an IP address of 192.168, so 1.3. Okay, now the /24 means there's 24 bits or 3 bits for the subnet mask. That means it's 255.255.255.0, but don't worry about that yet. That'll become clearer. It's got a MAC address as well, which is something that we'll be looking at as well. So that's the physical address. All right. Now everything this side of this router here is a network. Okay. There's another network over here, which everything in this network begins with 192.168.1. So that's that network. Over in this network, it's 192.168.2.0. Now I've given these private addresses, which is a bit silly, but it doesn't matter. All right. So if I want to send something to that network, it means that the IP address will not begin with 192.168.1. So we know it has to go to the router. Okay. So how can we do that? Well, we have a server over in this network. Its IP address is 192.168.2.4. Okay. Now if I click on that server, you've got services running, and I've got one of them is HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So it's running as a web server. Okay. So if I'm over here, I can run up a web browser by clicking there. Now I need to put this in simulation mode. Right. So what is the address of that machine over there? Well, it's 192. So I'm going to do HTTP, because that's Hypertext Transfer Protocol, //192.168. Is it 2? Yeah, 2.4. I know it's 4 because that one's 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so if I press enter, that will try and load up the default web page. Right. Now, it's going to do quite a lot of other packets as well, but just generally, if we have a look at this TCP packet here, click on that, it shows us, right, so we have several layers here, which is important, all right? So the first thing is we've got, this is the layer 2. Below that is layer 1, which is the physical layer. Layer 2 is the Ethernet stuff. Now this is using MAC addresses. All right, so this is doing the hop to hop. So that's going to get this packet, this blue one here, from over there to there. All right. The IP address, we've got a source IP, which is me, which is this machine here, which is 192.168.1.3, and the destination IP is 102.168. Yeah. 2.4. Not quite sure why that is. That will become clearer later. Right, so we've got port, that's my source port number, and destination port number. We'll look at that later. Right, so let's look at that one. Yeah, that one gives me the correct, which is ICMP packets, their Internet Control Messaging Protocol. Well, let's see what happens. So off it goes. Now what one's that one? That's the ICMP. So off it goes. So it goes to the router. Now to get it from there to there is called a hop. Then it's going to do another hop over to that one. Okay. And the green one is it's a protocol. So really sending out an awful lot more than we wanted to, but we'll get there in a minute. We'll get to an HTTP one. Hang on. So this is much more. Let me get it to a. Well, has it done it yet? No, it's still not done it yet. I think this is because I haven't used it for a while. It's sending out a lot of packets first. Right, let's just run it. Right. Okay, let's turn it off simulation and just do real time. Oh, that's why I put the wrong IP address in. That's why it came up with the 102. Idiot. Yeah, we couldn't find it. So let's do 192 this time. Oh, Jesus. Right, simulation. Let's reset that. Right, okay. So let's try that again. Sorry, that was ridiculous. Now, this time, my TCP will give me the right one. Yeah, there we go. So destination IP is that, source IP is that. Right, doesn't help, does it? Right, okay, so hopefully this should now work. Right, so off that goes. So it goes to the switch, it goes to that router there, then it hops along to the next one, and then right, so that one there. Okay, so it came from the source is that one. So this is going to be sent back. So this is showing the destination. So it's sending the stuff back now. Right, so that one's going to go back. And eventually, right. So now what it basically setting stuff up. Now it can send the HTTP packet, and because you look at it now, it hasn't actually received the data, but it will do now with the HTTP. So that was just the setup. All right, it was just setting up the connection between the two using TCP. Now it's got that connection, you can now send an HTTP. And if it goes back, so this is coming back now with the actual requested data, and it doesn't actually show it there, but it should. Yeah, there we go. So it's actually filled in that web page. Now, a couple of things really. All we got to really worry about at the moment is one, what happens is our frames or packets change. Okay, now what changes is this layer 2 stuff as it goes from one hop to another, because it gets new MAC addresses each time. So when it arrives at a router is a layer 3 device. It looks at this destination IP address and then passes it on to another router. Now I've only got router to route here, but I could have added another router and it could have decided which one to send it to. All right. So what happens is then when it gets there, it gets a new MAC address. So the source MAC address would be that machine, the destination MAC address would be that machine. All right. Once it arrives at this router knows where the MAC address of that machine is. All right. So it will change the layer 2 stuff again and then update the actual MAC addresses. So source MAC address is that one, destination MAC address is that. Okay, so and then finally gets to the machine it wanted to with the correct IP address, and then it hops back necessarily the right. But what remains the same is the layer 3 stuff. All right, and that remains the same. Right, okay, so that is your very quick, rough and ready guide to routers. Now I suggest what you do look at is the video here, this one here, which goes into, let's say, you upload to a packet tracer expert, unlike myself. Now, have a go at those questions and then we will look at the next chapter.